I inherited millions from my rich uncle, but had to live alone for a year. What I discovered in his house changed me forever. I, 29M, never expected to inherit anything from my uncle. We weren't close, and I'd only seen him a handful of times throughout my life. He was the black sheep of the family, eccentric, solitary, and incredibly wealthy. No one knew exactly how he made his fortune, just that he had more money than the rest of our family combined. When I received the call about his death, I felt a strange emptiness. Not grief exactly, but a sense that something significant had happened. I attended the funeral out of obligation, standing awkwardly among distant relatives who, like me, barely knew the man we were burying. 3 days later, I got a call from his attorney. "Your uncle left everything to you," the attorney said, his voice matter of fact. "The house, the investments, the cash. All of it." I nearly dropped the phone. That can't be right. We hardly knew each other. "Nevertheless, you're the sole beneficiary. There is, however, one condition." Of course there was. My uncle wouldn't just give away millions without some kind of catch. "You need to live in his house for 1 full year before the estate transfers to your name. If you leave before the year is up, everything goes to charity." I laughed. "That's it. Just live in a mansion for a year." The attorney cleared his throat. "There's more. You cannot have visitors. Not a single one. The house is equipped with security cameras that will be monitored. If anyone other than you enters the property during that year, you forfeit everything." I fell silent, considering what this meant. A year of isolation in exchange for financial security for the rest of my life. It seemed like an easy choice. When do I start? The house was massive, a sprawling Victorian mansion on 20 acres of wooded land, miles from the nearest neighbor. As I pulled up the long driveway, I felt a chill despite the summer heat. The place had a foreboding air about it, with its weathered gray exterior and dark windows that seemed to watch me approach. Inside was worse. Every room was packed with stuff. My uncle had been a collector of the strange and unusual. Taxidermied animals in unnatural poses. Masks from cultures I couldn't identify. Shelves of old books in languages I didn't recognize. And mirrors, dozens of them, hung on every wall, positioned so that you could hardly move without catching your reflection. I called my girlfriend that night. "This place is creepy as hell." "You don't have to do this," she said. "We were fine before. We'll be fine without your uncle's money." But we weren't fine. We were drowning in student debt, living paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment. This inheritance was our ticket out. "It's just a year," I said. "Then we're set for life." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. But we can still talk every day. It'll go by fast." I hung up and looked around at my new home. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the old house settling. 1 year. I could do this. The first month wasn't too bad. I explored the house, finding new oddities daily. I set up a routine, work remotely during the day, exercise in the evening, call my girlfriend at night. I started cleaning out some of the more disturbing collections, packing them away in the attic. But as the second month began, things started to change. I began to notice details that unsettled me, like how the books on the shelves would rearrange themselves when I wasn't looking, or how sometimes, just at the edge of my vision, the reflections in the mirrors didn't quite match my movements. I convinced myself it was just isolation playing tricks on my mind. Then the notes started appearing. The first one was on my laptop one morning. A yellow sticky note in handwriting I didn't recognize. "I know why you're here." I searched the house, convinced someone was playing a prank. But the security system showed no breaches, no one entering or leaving. The notes continued. "He didn't tell you everything. Look behind the mirrors. Get out while you can." I started having trouble sleeping. Every noise in the night had me reaching for the baseball bat I'd started keeping beside my bed. When I did sleep, I had vivid nightmares of being trapped in the house forever, of the walls closing in, of faces watching me from the mirrors. By the third month, I was seriously considering giving up. The money wasn't worth my sanity. But every time I thought about leaving, I remembered the mountain of debt waiting for me, the dead-end job, the future I'd be throwing away. So I stayed, and I started investigating. Behind one of the largest mirrors in the house, I found a hidden door. It led to a small room containing nothing but a desk and a journal, my uncle's private diary. I began reading, hoping to understand why he'd chosen me, why he'd set this bizarre condition. The journal entries started normally enough: business dealings, complaints about family members, notes about his collections. But about 10 years ago, the tone changed. He began writing about voices he heard in the house, about feeling constantly watched, about suspecting that something was living in the walls. The entries became increasingly paranoid and erratic. He wrote about making a deal with them, whoever they were, about sacrifices and bargains. The final entry, dated just a week before his death, chilled me to the bone. "I've bought my freedom, but the price was high. They need someone to watch, someone to feed them. I'm sorry, nephew. You were always the sensitive one. You'll hear them too. But remember, never let anyone else in. They get hungry around strangers. I slammed the journal shut, my heart racing. This was insane. My uncle had clearly lost his mind in his isolation. There were no them. There was nothing in the walls. I was letting his madness infect me. I resolved to ignore the strange occurrences, to focus on getting through the year. I threw myself into work, exercised until I was too exhausted to think, and avoided the mirrors as much as possible. But the house had other plans. For months in, the power went out during a thunderstorm. I fumbled around for candles, the flashlight on my phone casting wild shadows on the walls. As I lit the first candle, I heard it, a soft scratching sound coming from inside the walls. Hello. I called out, immediately feeling foolish. But the scratching stopped, replaced by silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Then a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. Hello. I ran to my bedroom and locked the door, pushing a dresser in front of it for good measure. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. When the power came back on, I called the attorney. I want out, I said. This house, there's something wrong with it. I understand it can be difficult living alone, he said, his voice maddeningly calm. But remember what's at stake. 8 more months, and you never have to worry about money again. Did you know my uncle was insane? Did you read his journal? A pause. Your uncle was troubled in his later years. But the house is perfectly safe. There's nothing there that can hurt you. I wasn't so sure about that. By the 6-month mark, I'd adapted to the house's peculiarities. Yes, sometimes I heard whispers. Sometimes objects moved when I wasn't looking. Sometimes the reflections in the mirrors showed things that weren't there. But nothing had actually harmed me. I developed a strange relationship with the house, or whatever lived in it. I started talking to it, just to break the silence. And sometimes, it answered. I learned to avoid certain rooms at night. I learned that the whispers grew louder when I was afraid, so I practiced staying calm. I learned that playing music helped drown out the sounds from the walls. My girlfriend was becoming increasingly concerned during our calls. You don't sound like yourself, she said. You're different. I'm fine, I insisted. Just tired. Let me come visit. Just for a day. No one will know. No. The force of my response surprised even me. I mean, I can't risk it. The cameras. Screw the cameras. This isn't healthy. You're isolating yourself with some weird obsession about your uncle's house. It's not an obsession. It's an opportunity. I lowered my voice. Please understand. 6 more months. Then we'll have everything we ever wanted. She hung up without saying goodbye. At the 8-month mark, I stopped calling her. Stopped calling anyone. The house had become my world, its whispers my only company. I'd begun to understand what my uncle meant in his journal. They weren't malevolent, exactly. Just hungry. For attention. For fear. For company. I started leaving food out at night. Nothing fancy, just plates of leftovers. By morning, they'd always be empty. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke to the sound of breaking glass downstairs. Grabbing my bat, I crept down to find the front window shattered and a figure standing in my living room. My girlfriend. What are you doing here? I hissed, panic rising in my throat. You can't be here. I had to see you, she said, her eyes wide with concern. You stopped calling. Your friends are worried. I'm worried. You need to leave. Now, I glanced nervously at the corners of the room, where the shadows seemed to be growing deeper, stretching toward her. Not until you talk to me. What's happening to you? That's when the whispers started, louder than I'd ever heard them. Not just from the walls now, but from all around us. My girlfriend heard them too. I could see it in her face as the color drained from her cheeks. What is that? She whispered. They're hungry, I said simply. And you're not supposed to be here. The shadows were moving now, coalescing into shapes that were almost human, but not quite. My girlfriend screamed and backed toward the door, but the shadows were faster, surrounding her, reaching for her with tendrils of darkness. I had a choice to make in that moment. I could try to save her, fight off whatever these things were, and lose everything. Or I could let them take her and secure my fortune. I wish I could say I made the right choice. The police never found her body. They questioned me, of course, but there was no evidence she'd ever been to the house. The security footage showed no one entering. Somehow, the cameras had malfunctioned during those precise minutes. Eventually, they had to give up. I completed my year in the house. The attorney came on the final day, papers in hand. Congratulations, he said, not meeting my eyes. The estate is yours. I signed where he indicated, my hand steady. Tell me something. Did you know? About what's in this house? He packed up his briefcase without answering. At the door, he paused. Your uncle made the same choice, you know? His wife. That's how he got the money in the first place. He looked at me then, his eyes cold. Enjoy your fortune. I've moved out of the house now, into a penthouse apartment in the city. I have everything I ever wanted. Money, freedom, luxury. Everything except her. Everything except peace. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear the whispers. And sometimes, in the mirrors of my new home, I catch glimpses of shadows moving on their own. Waiting. Hungry. I've started looking for an heir. Someone young, desperate, drowning in debt. Someone who would do anything for a chance at wealth. Someone like I once was. The condition will be the same. 1 year in the house. No visitors. They're getting hungry again, you see. And the cycle must continue.